is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Andrew Wilson. Our top stories this hour. King Charles III is formally proclaimed Britain's new monarch during an historic ceremony. He pays tribute to his mother's example.
Taking up these responsibilities, I shall strive to follow the inspiring example I have been set.
Trumpets ring out across London, delivering the news of the proclamation of King Charles III. And tens of thousands of people continue to come and pay their respects to the Queen. We'll be live outside Buckingham Palace. And in other news, Ukraine makes major gains in its eastern offensive against Russia, with a key strategic city in its sights. King Charles III has officially been proclaimed Britain's new monarch in a historic ceremony featuring centuries-old tradition, the pageantry of trumpets and a military guard. The UK's new sovereign vowed to follow the inspiring example of his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II. The Queen died peacefully on Thursday at the age of 96 after 7 decades on the phone. Our correspondent, Noe Jabakal, reports now from Balmoral in Scotland.
70 years in waiting. The UK's new monarch formally crowned King Charles III. This is the digital age, of course, so in a break with centuries of tradition, this intimate and closely guarded ceremony televised for the first time ever.
Beseeching God, by whom kings and queens do reign, to bless his majesty with long and happy years to reign over us. God save the King!
God save the King!
The event witnessed by the Accession Council, a group of senior royals, politicians and members of the Anglican Church. This is a strange time for the world's most famous royal family, mourning the loss of its figurehead while marching ahead with the formalities of transition, a juxtaposition facing the country and its new ruler.
I am deeply aware of this great inheritance and of the duties and heavy responsibilities of sovereignty, which have now passed to me.
The mood near Balmoral Castle, where the Queen passed away on Thursday, far more subdued. Locals still coming to terms with the events of recent days.
She came here, what, for like 3 or 4 months of a year? I think it was amazing for her.
It's very sad. It really, really is. I mean, she's an institution, really, isn't she?
She's done a really good job, and I think Charles has got a hard act to follow, but I think he'll be different, but not necessarily bad.
Different how?
Because he has got political views that he makes known.
This part of the world was cherished by the late monarch. The rural Scottish Highlands, a world away from the hustle and bustle of London, a chance to shelter from the glare of the outside world. The coming days will see the Queen's body remain here in Scotland, moving to the capital Edinburgh to lie in state, so many more can pay their respects. In London, the King's proclamation marked by pomp, pageantry and colour, an ancient tradition not seen on these shores for 7 decades, and with it, the formal end of the second Elizabethan era and the beginning of the reign of Charles III. Noe Jabakal, CGTN, Balmoral in Scotland.
Matthew Dennison is a royal biographer and author of The Queen. I asked him what the immediate focus will be for the new king.
Now, I guess what we're doing is that there will be business in council to be enacted, further business, but it will all be moving towards this big state funeral, the first state funeral we've seen in Britain since 1965, the first state funeral for a sovereign since 1952, and the first state funeral to happen at Westminster Abbey since the 18th century.
It's so interesting looking at the events at St James's Palace today. The invited members, some 250 or so, of a full complement that could have been there from the Accession Council to witness this acceptance of the monarchy by King Charles III. One was struck, even though by the seniority in age as well as stature of the people in the room, that none of them were around when this happened the last time. So it's fresh ground, although it's well documented and well arranged. Two speeches so far from King Charles, an address to his mother, and again the acceptance there at the St James's Palace. Have we gleaned anything yet about what kind of monarch Prince Charles, King Charles now, is setting himself up to be?
Well, I think what we have seen is a degree of sagacity and a degree of awareness. It's interesting, isn't it? I think as a nation in 2022, possibly the most important of the three things that have happened over the last 2 days, the Accession Council and the proclamation and the King's address to the nation. King's address to the nation, I think, is for many people the most important, because it was when he expressed ideas that possibly will give us an insight into his approach to sovereignty. And I thought it was really important that he addressed head-on a number of things that perhaps were concerns for some people. He reaffirmed his loyalty to Anglicanism. He named Prince William as his heir. It was interesting, wasn't it? He said, "William, my heir." So again, that kind of emphasis on the succession and the continuity of monarchy. He made it quite clear that he intended to abide by a constitutional practice, that his years of activism were over, and he seemed to attempt to lay a ghost in that kind of olive branch offered to the Sussexes. I think that shows considerable wisdom. They were all things that perhaps concerned people that I hope people will now be less concerned by. But also, I think it showed the extent to which he has absorbed the example of his remarkable mother.
All those, as you say, all those little concerns dealt with in these early addresses, particularly putting behind him all the elements that have built his career as Prince of Wales so far, handing them over quite cleanly, also expressing compassion to his other son, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, in the United States, and respecting their desire to live abroad, laying down some olive branches as well, perhaps, but all setting the stage with at least already 3 important televised arrangements being made for the public to see this process taking place. That's already a flavour of modernisation that we haven't seen before, and perhaps communication will be his focus going forward.
Yes, I think, you know, we owe it to the late Queen to say that an innovation of the last reign was this embracing of television, of a kind of more democratic approach to the ceremonies of monarchy. Even if, you know, in the Queen's case, she had reservations at certain times. She had, of course, been taught by a man called Henry Martin from the age of 13. He was her teacher in constitutional history, and one of the lessons he told her was about her grandfather, George V's embrace of new technology. And what Henry Martin was thinking of then was George V's introduction of the radio Christmas broadcast, radio being the only medium available then. The young Queen took that on board. She wasn't a particularly comfortable TV performer for much of the time, but I think she recognised TV was a way of building a bond between Crown and country, and it seems only right that the Prince of Wales should continue that. I don't think it would be an option not continuing it, but expanding that is clearly positive.
Ukraine says it has recaptured Kupiansk from Russian forces, the latest city to be liberated in its lightning counterattack in the east of the country. There are also reports from Russia that their troops have now left the strategic city of Izium. The Ukrainian forces have advanced 50 kilometers inside Russian lines and claim to have recaptured around 1,000 square kilometers of territory. Well, our correspondent Julia Chapman is in the capital, Kiev, and joins us live. Julia, good to speak to you. Ukrainian forces appear to be making significant gains in the east. What can you tell us?
They do indeed, and unexpectedly quickly as well. Ukraine announced a counter-offensive in the south of the country, in the Kherson region, just over a week ago. But in the last few days, the Kharkiv region has really become the area where they are making the biggest inroads. And part of that, analysts say, is because of the element of surprise. Russia had diverted many of its troops to reinforce positions in the south, in Kherson, leaving them exposed in the Kharkiv region. And over the last couple of days, we have seen Ukraine taking back more and more territory. Volodymyr Zelensky saying yesterday 1,000 square kilometers now back under Ukrainian control that was previously held by the Russians. The Institute for the Study of War suggests that that could actually be a conservative estimate. It may be as much as 2,500 square kilometers, and at least 30 settlements have been retaken by the Ukrainians, including, as we're learning today, Kupiansk and as well Izum. In the last few hours, there have been developments there as well. We have heard from the Russian Ministry of Defense additionally saying that they have ordered their troops to draw down and redeploy to the Donetsk region, which Ukraine is saying is a big victory. There were videos circulating on social media of Ukrainian troops coming into Kupiansk in the early hours of this morning, appearing not to be met with any resistance. Indeed, yesterday, Russia said it had ordered civilians in some of those towns to evacuate. So certainly now we are seeing pictures and videos being shared by some of the Ukrainian forces with Ukrainian flags flying on buildings in a number of towns and cities in the Kharkiv region. A major development for the Ukrainians, really the biggest victory that they have managed to achieve since about a month into the invasion, when they retook control of the towns around Kyiv itself.
And much being made of this city of Izum. What's the significance of that place?
Izum is a major hub for the Russians logistically. It has been a way that they've been able to resupply their troops in the Donbass region because a railway line goes from Russian territory into Ukraine through Izum and down into the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. So cutting them off from that vital supply line is a major success strategically for the Ukrainians. This isn't just a matter of taking Ukrainian territory back under Ukrainian control, territory that has been held by the Russians for several months now, but it will also make a dent in the ability of the Russians to resupply their troops, and that will make things much more difficult for them. It leaves them more exposed on the front lines of the fighting. We are certainly seeing the Russians admitting now some defeats in these areas. We've seen bloggers and military voices in the country voicing and expressing their concern over the developments of recent days. The Ministry of Defense now trying to come up with a reason for it, saying that they are reinforcing their positions in the Donetsk region instead.
And on the diplomatic side, Julia, an important visitor to Kyiv today.
That's right. The German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock made her second visit to Kyiv since February 24th, really trying to show Ukraine that Germany still stands behind the country, that it isn't losing steam or compassion or interest in this war, wanting to show that the German people still support the effort. Of course, this comes as Europe is heading into what will inevitably be a very difficult winter. Russia turning off the taps of gas to major consumers, particularly Germany, will be very much exposed. And so this is a major moment where Germany feels the need to show that it is still standing behind Ukraine. The Ukrainian Prime Minister was in Berlin last week asking for more weapons, more military aid, which is being sent here to Ukraine, not nearly as much as we've seen the Americans supply. But we are seeing this visit by the German Foreign Minister at a time when there are concerns that the West could be waning in its support for the war effort here in Ukraine. Germany very determined to show that that is not the case.
Indeed. Julia, thanks very much indeed. Julia Chapman there in Kyiv for us. Still ahead on CGTN, mooncakes and family reunions. Festivities get underway for one of China's most important holidays.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
There's a new agenda for a new world, accelerating change in almost every part of our lives. It's shifting the norms of how we work, travel, and connect. How we think, interact, and develop. It's a new reality, a new agenda with me, Juliet Mann.
Welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. Ukraine makes major gains in its eastern offensive against Russia with a key strategic city in its sights. King Charles III is formally proclaimed Britain's new monarch during an historic ceremony. He vows to follow his mother's inspiring example. Tens of thousands of people have been streaming past Buckingham Palace here in London to pay their respects to the Queen. Let's go over to our correspondent, Kimberly Lim, who's outside the palace. Kimberly, good to talk to you. The people keep coming, and one suspects they will keep coming again and again as well.
Oh, absolutely, Andrew. I mean, as you said, there are tens of thousands of people here, many who have been queuing for hours to come and pay tribute to Queen Elizabeth II and simply be able to walk past the palace, as you can see behind me, and lay their floral tribute. The floral tributes have become so many, Andrew, that they've had to be moved to an area over in Green Park so that they can, frankly, all be accommodated. But, as you said, we very much expects these crowds to grow in numbers over the coming few days, and in the run-up to the state funeral, which we heard just a short while ago, will be on Monday, September the 19th. Now, if you can see behind me, Andrew, there are some construction workers building a sort of platform that will no doubt be used for events on the 19th of September.
And we understand, of course, Kimberly, the people are there partly to welcome a new king who's been crowned, King Charles III, but also to pay their own respects to the Queen.
Absolutely, absolutely indeed. And, it's incredible the amount of people who have come from so many different parts of the country and indeed from different parts of the world, tourists who are here but who want to come and lay their tribute and speak about how much the Queen meant to them, even though they're foreign nationals. But I think, one of the tributes we ought to talk about right now, Andrew, is one that came out just a short while ago from the new Prince of Wales. He put out a statement basically really paying tribute to his grandmother and saying how the world lost a leader, but he lost a grandmother. He wrote very poignantly that she was there for him in the happiest but also the saddest of times. It was a very personal tribute that I think no one could help but be moved by. But, I've been out today, Andrew, speaking with people in the crowd to ask them, why they're here, what Queen Elizabeth II meant to them, and here is what some of them had to say.
This is really overwhelming. I mean, we've been over there before, so we dropped our flower there, and it's just, yes, overwhelming to see how many people share the same feelings with us.
I'm not at all surprised at the number of people that I've seen on the tube coming down with flowers, and obviously here. It's quite a momentous occasion.
My mother, my grandmother, my children, my grandchildren. You're talking about 5 or 6 generations have only known this Queen. And she's Queen of the world. She's not just Queen of Britain. She's, United Kingdom. She's Queen all over the world. She's the Queen.
And Kimberly, we have this date now for the funeral of September 19th, Monday week. What can we expect before then?
Well, certainly, Andrew, without doubt, we're going to see an awful lot more people streaming past Buckingham Palace here to pay their respects. But in terms of sort of the events under sort of London Bridge, which is the official code name for the series of events that takes place upon the Queen's death, what happens next is we will be turning our attention back to Scotland, where the Queen's coffin will be moved tomorrow from Balmoral to Holyrood Palace in Edinburgh. On Tuesday, it will then be flown back to London here. It's been reported just a short while ago that Princess Anne will accompany the coffin back to London, where the Queen will then lie out in state for 4 days in Westminster Hall ahead of the state funeral. And in the coming few days, I expect we'll see a lot of foreign dignitaries arriving, the great and the good, Andrew, to come to attend that funeral on the 19th.
Kimberly, thanks very much indeed. Kimberly Lim there at Buckingham Palace. And let's move from central London to Windsor Castle. And we can see there a sight perhaps we didn't expect to see under the current circumstances. But the new Prince of Wales and Princess of Wales and also the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan, together outside the gates of Windsor Castle, inspecting together the floral tributes that have been laid there, just as they have been in many other locations around the country. This is an extraordinary sight to many royal watchers because thus far the reports coming from, or the rumours coming from around palace circles is that these two brothers are not yet reconciled and that relations have been difficult. However, this is very much a photo call that people will be jumping to see and talking about, no doubt, for the rest of the day and into the week to come, that Prince Harry and Prince William, together with their wives, respective wives, are coming down to look at the flowers. Remember also, these scenes are strikingly familiar to those of when Princess Diana, the boy's mother, who died in 1997, when the members of the royal family there, led by the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh, came out also silently, dressed in dark clothing, to inspect the floral tributes laid out there at Kensington Palace and outside Buckingham Palace. Very similar scenes there, echoing that event, of course, which was so formative, of course, in both these young men's lives, the death of their mother, Princess Diana, also Princess of Wales in her time. Let's leave that scene now, continuing a scene that many people will be talking about, I'm sure. Francis Tiafoe has vowed to win the US Open, one day after he narrowly missed out on a place in the tennis tournament's final, losing to Spanish teenager Carlos Alcaraz. Tiafoe is the highest-ranked African-American player in the world. His play on the court is thrilling spectators, and the story of how he got there is inspiring millions. CGTN's Jim Spellman reports.
At the U.S. Open in New York, 24-year-old Francis Tiafoe has drawn attention for his play on the court and his unlikely personal journey.
I mean, I'm a son of immigrants. Both parents grew up in Sierra Leone, born and raised Sierra Leone. Came to the States early 90s, late 80s, around there, whatever. And they met here and had me and my twin brother.
His mother worked as a nurse. His father worked at a tennis center outside Washington, D.C., first on a construction crew building the center, later as the head of maintenance. Times were tough. Sometimes the boys slept at the club.
My name is Francis Tiafoe. My favorite shot is my forehand.
But young Francis learned the game and quickly excelled. He turned pro in 2015.
Yeah, I just had a big passion for the game, and not even mainly for me, just to do it for them.
At the U.S. Open, he thrilled the crowd by beating #2 seed Rafael Nadal and winning a shout-out from basketball star LeBron James. He has a devoted social media following where he is known as Big Foe. His aggressive play on the court and his calm and confident demeanor off the court have made him a fan favorite.
I know you had some pretty big fans over here. I saw them getting into it the entire time. You got your box, and this whole stadium was with you today. What's that feel like? I feel so at home on courts like this. Like, this court is unbelievable. You guys get so far behind me. I want to play. I want to give my best.
Tiafoe is now ranked 26th in the world, the highest-ranked African-American in men's tennis. He is inspiring more young black players to take up the game.
I love that because of Francis Tiafoe, there's a lot of people of color playing the game of tennis. I think that's obviously a goal for me, and yeah, that's why I'm out here trying pretty hard.
He has this message for anyone inspired by his story.
If you're truly, truly passionate about something, I think anything can happen, and being just obsessed with it. Right now, I'm just really obsessed with tennis, and I want to see how far I can go with this thing.
Jim Spellman, CGTN, Washington.
For thousands of years, the Mid-Autumn Festival has been celebrated in China as an important time of reunion. The eastern city of Kunshan in Jiangsu province has held a lantern fair to mark the festivities and promote exchanges between the mainland and Taiwan. Wu Bin reports.
Giant lantern set. Echoes of Kunchi opera. And a stunning firework display. This kicked off the Mid-Autumn Lantern Fair in East China's Kunshan city. The event aims to promote cross-strait exchanges by showcasing Taiwan-inspired lanterns.
The bridge is in the middle of the frame, symbolizing cross-strait connections. On the right, we can see famous landmarks of Taiwan, such as Ali Mountain and the Sun Moon Lake.
The city of Kunshan has attracted over 5,700 Taiwan-invested enterprises in the last 3 decades. An estimated 150,000 Taiwan people live here, accounting for about 7% of its population. The Lantern Festival attracts many of them each year.
During the festival, we more than ever think about our relatives in Taiwan. The Lantern Festival makes us feel at home.
Though miles apart, we will share the beauty of the moon together. Over 1,000 years ago, Asian poet Su Shi wrote this on Mid-Autumn Day. It's become the most famous line for the festival. It is said the Mid-Autumn moon is the brightest and roundest, and for Chinese people, it represents family reunion. But for those who can't be with their families, it also represents their longing for loved ones.
My parents are in Taiwan, and my wife and child are in Kunsan. So this year I spend the festival in Kunsan, and my parents celebrate it in Taiwan. But we all do it under the same round, bright moon.
For Chinese people, the full moon is a symbol of peace, prosperity, and family reunion. No matter where we are, we share the same culture, same roots, and the same bright, round moon. Wu Bin, CGTN, Kunshan, Jiangsu Province.
In a moment, my colleague Juliet Mann will be here with the agenda at the end of an historic week for the UK. What does the new Prime Minister mean for Britain's role on the global stage? That's the agenda right after the World Today at 16:30 GMT here on CGTN. That's the World Today. Let's leave you with some pictures from Windsor Castle that we saw earlier on. We'll just remind you we'll be on smart TV apps, Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV. But here, these astonishing pictures of the Prince of Wales and Princess of Wales greeting well-wishers outside Windsor Castle. And on the other side, more barriers and more people waiting. And Prince Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, doing the same thing. They came out together to inspect the floral tributes, and now they've broken away from those and are talking to members of the crowds. Fantastic scenes for many royal watchers because of all the talk of these rifts in the royal family and how they have struggled to put together any kind of rapprochement or reconciliation in recent times. However, we are reminded, of course, of Prince Charles's address to the nation yesterday, when he offered quite clearly his love to Harry and Meghan and well wishes to them from him and the rest of the royal family to their future living overseas. But here they are now. They were scheduled to go back to the United States on Thursday. They've stayed, and the plan is now for them to stay right through until Monday week, of course, when the funeral takes place. However, what we have today is the beginnings of something that will strike up all sorts of speculation around the country and amongst the media particularly, of course, about what's going on in terms of relations within the royal family, and particularly between these two brothers, who at one point were so close and then, of course, suffered such a rift with various misunderstandings surrounding the marriage of Harry and Meghan and her unhappiness in the UK and her retreat to them as a couple to California to build a new life there. But there we see Prince Harry and Meghan Markle receiving smiles, well wishes, exchanging words with a line of people. And frankly, we're running out of time here at CGTN, but it looks like they could go on for quite some time there because there are thousands of people there. More news at the top of the hour. For now, though, from all of our team here in London, we'll leave you with this extraordinary scenes, which no one expected, and already all royal events are planned with flexibility for the unexpected. But for now, from London, goodbye.